Let Us Be Muslims by Sayyid Abul Mawdudi, edited by the late brother Khurram Murad. May Allah bless your souls. Chapter 18, True Spirit of the Fasting. Spirit and Form. Brothers in Islam, essentially every work which we do has two components. The first is its purpose and spirit. The second, the particular form which is chosen to achieve that purpose. Take the case of food. Your main purpose in eating is to stay alive and maintain your strength. The method of achieving this object is that you take a piece of food, put it in your mouth, chew it and swallow it. This method is adopted since it is the most effective and appropriate one to achieve your purpose. But everyone knows that the main thing is the purpose for which food is taken, and not the form the act of eating takes, What would you say if someone tried to eat a piece of sawdust or cinder or mud? You would say that he was mad or ill. Why? Because he clearly would not have understood the real purpose of eating and would have erroneously believed that chewing and swallowing constitute eating. Likewise, you would also call someone mad who thrusts his fingers down his throat to vomit up the food he had just eaten and then complain that the benefit said to accrue from taking food were not being realized. Rather, on the contrary, he was daily getting thinner. This person blames food for a situation that is due to his own stupidity, although outward actions are certainly necessary because without them, the bread cannot reach the stomach. The purpose of eating cannot be achieved by merely fulfilling these outward actions. The outward replaces the real. Perhaps you can now understand why our ibadah has become ineffectual and empty. The greatest mistake of all is to take the acts of the prayer and fasting and the outward shape as the real ibadah. If you do so, you are just like the person who thinks that merely performing four acts, taking a piece of food, putting it in the mouth, chewing it and swallowing it, make up the process of eating. Such a person imagines that whoever does these four things has eaten the food. He then expects that he should receive the benefits of eating, irrespective of whether he puts down into his stomach mud and stone or vomited up the bread soon after eating it. Otherwise, how can you explain that a man who is fasting and is thus engaged in the ibadah of God from morning till evening, in the midst of the ibadah, tells a lie or slander someone? Why does he quarrel on the slightest pretext and abuse those he is quarreling with? How dare he encroach on other people's right? Why does he make money illegally and give money to others illicitly? And how can he claim, having done all these things, that he has still performed the ibadah of Allah? Does this not resemble the action of those persons who eat cinders and mud and thinks that by merely completing the four requirements of eating, he has actually done the job of eating? How too can we claim to have worshipped Allah for many long hours throughout Ramadan, when the impact of this whole exercise in spiritual and moral upliftment vanishes on the first day of the next month? During the Eid days, we do all that Hindus do in their festival, so much so that in some places we even turn to adultery, drinking and gambling. And I've seen some degenerates who fast during the day and drink alcohol and commit adultery at night. Most Muslims, thank God, have not fallen so low. But how many of us still retain any trace of piety and virtue by the second day of Eid? Wrong views of worship. The reason most of you behave as you do is that the very meaning and purpose of ibadah has become distorted in your mind. You think that mere abstention from eating and drinking throughout the day is the fasting. You therefore are very particular to observe the minutest details about it. You fear God to the extent that you avoid even the slightest violation of this rule, but you do not appreciate that merely being hungry and thirsty is not the purpose, but only the form. The form has been prescribed to create in you such fear of God and love, such strength of will and character, that even against your desire, you avoid seemingly profitable things which in fact displease Allah, and do this thing which possibly entails risk and losses but definitely please Allah. Do those things which possibly entails risk and losses but definitely please Allah. This strength can be developed only when you understand the purpose of the fasting and you desire to put to use the training you have undergone of curbing your physical desire for the fear and love of God only. But what happens as soon as Ramadan is over? You throw to the winds all that you gain from the fasting, just as the man who has eaten food vomits it up by thrusting his fingers down his throat. Just as physical strength cannot be obtained from bread until it is digested, transformed into blood, which spread through every vein, so spiritual strength cannot be obtained from the fasting until the person who keeps fast is conscious of its purpose and allows it to permeate his heart and mind and dominate his thought, motives and deed. Fasting as a way to piety. That is why Allah, after ordaining the fasting, has said that fasting is made obligatory to you, so that you may attain to God consciousness. La alaykum tattakun. La alaykum tattakun. Note that there is no guarantee that you will definitely become God conscious and righteous. Only someone who recognizes the purpose of the fasting and strives to achieve it will receive his blessing. Someone will receive his blessing. Someone who does not cannot hope to gain anything from it. Conditions of true fasting. The Prophet, blessing and peace be on him, has in various ways pointed out the real spirit of fasting and have explained that to go hungry and thirsty while ignoring the spirit carries no value in the sight of God. Abstention from falsehood. Once he said, if one does not give up speaking falsehood and acting by it, God does not require him to give up eating and drinking. Bukhari. On another occasion he said, many are the people who fast, but who gain nothing from their fast except hunger and thirst. And many are those who stand praying all night, but gain nothing except sleeplessness. The lessons are clear and unequivocal. Merely being hungry and thirsty is not by itself worship, but a means of performing real worship. Real worship means desisting from violating the law of God out of this fear and this love of God, pursuing activities that please Him, and refraining from the indiscriminate satisfaction of physical desires. If you fast while ignoring this essence of the fasting, you are simply causing unnecessary inconvenience in your stomachs. Faith and self-scrutiny. The Prophet, blessing and peace be on him, draws attention to another aim of fasting. Thus, whoever observes the fast, believing and counting as all his past sins forgiven. Bukhari and Muslims. Believing means that faith in God should remain alive in the consciousness of a Muslim. Counting means that you should seek only Allah's pleasure, constantly watching over your thoughts and action to make sure you are doing nothing contrary to his pleasure, and trusting and expecting the rewards promised by Allah and the Messenger. Observing these two principles bring the rich reward of all your past sins, being forgiven. Bring the rich reward of all your past sins being forgiven. The reason is obvious. Even you were once disobedient, you have now turned fully repentant to your master. And a penitent is like one who has, as it were, never committed a sin at all. As said the Prophet, blessing and peace be on him, by hadith collected by Ibn Majah. Shield against sins. On another occasion, the Prophet, blessing and peace be on him, said, the fast is like a shield for protection from Satan's attack. Therefore, when one observes the fast, he should use this shield and abstain from quarreling. If anyone abuses him or quarrels with him, he should simply say, brother, I'm fasting. Do not expect me to indulge in similar conduct. Hadith from Bukhari and Muslim. Hunger for goodness. The Prophet, blessing and peace be on him, once directed that a man while fasting ought to do more good works than usual and ardently desire to perform acts of kindness. Compassion and sympathy for his brothers should intensify in his heart, because being himself in the throes of hunger and thirst, he will all the more be able to realize the misery of other servants of God who are destitute. In Ramadan, whoever provides food to a person who is fasting to break that fast will earn forgiveness for his sins, deliverance from the fire, and as much reward as the one who is fasting, without any reduction in the recompense of the latter. Hadith from Baihaqi. Abdullah ibn Abbas tells that the Prophet, blessing and peace be on him, used to become unduly kind and generous during Ramadan. No beggar in that period went empty-handed from his door, and as many slaves as possible were set free. Hadith as collected by Baihaqi. Subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahil aliyyil azim, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahil aliyyil azim, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahil aliyyil azim.